Hey folks, Will Mahan here for Saberune Design Tutorial Blog with another Photoshop CS6 Extended tutorial. Continuing on with our series on smart objects, this tutorial will cover smart filters. We all know what filters are. They're the guys that live up here under the filter menu that do all sorts of cool stuff to our work. Some of the most interesting things in Photoshop happen here. However, filters do have their own little Achilles heel. Used normally, filters apply their effects destructively, which means that the changes they make are permanent. Not only do they permanently change our subject, but once applied, there's no going back and changing the settings later on in the project. Well, short of stepping back through the history palette, but that's not really editing, is it? As we've stated a few times already at Saberune Design, part of being a good designer, or at least a less frustrated one, is working non-destructively whenever we can. It's not always possible, but it often is, and we should actively watch for opportunities to take advantage of Photoshop's ever-increasing potential for non-destructive editing. Enter the Smart Filter. Smart filters are very much like regular filters, but with one key difference. When applied, a smart filter does not affect the source document, but instead affects the smart object layer. This is a better option for two reasons. One, it's non-destructive. When we apply a smart filter, our source document is left untouched in its pristine condition. And two, smart filters can be readjusted after the fact. What's this mean? It means that no matter how far along we are in our work, no matter how many filters we have piled onto the stack, we are able to go back, even all the way to the beginning, make a change, and it will cascade down through the workflow. If you're interested in saving yourself time, money, and a few gray hairs, this is music to your ears. Granted, not all filters can be applied as a smart filter yet, so we're somewhat limited in that respect, but many of them can. Here's an example of a smart object layer with several smart filters applied. First, let's create a new document with a size of 1024 by 1024 and click OK. Next, we need a source image. What we start with really isn't that important, so I'll just quickly throw something together. Set your foreground color to pure cyan blue, and while holding down the Alt key, press backspace to fill the current layer. Next, go to Filter and Oil Paint. Set your stylization to 5, your cleanliness to 1, your scale to 10, and your bristle detail to 1, and click OK. Now, if you're still using CS5, you won't have the oil paint filter. That's not a problem. Just go ahead and do a cloud render instead. It doesn't really matter as long as we have something for our filters to react with. Now that we have a source image, in order to use smart filters, you must first convert your layer to a smart object. Let's go ahead and do that now by right-clicking on Layer 1 and choose Convert to Smart Object. Now let's apply a few smart filters. We apply those exactly the same way as we would normally. Don't worry about not knowing which filters are available and which are not, because as you can see, the ones that are not available are faded out in the list. First, let's go to Artistic and Plastic Wrap. Leave the settings at default and click OK. Then go to Filter, Artistic, Poster Edges. Leave the settings at default and click OK. Then go to Filter, Distort, Twirl. Leave the settings at default, click OK. And finally go to Filter, Texture, and Stained Glass. Once again, leaving the settings at default and click OK. Now for the fun part. As you can see, with the layer expanded, the smart filters are shown in a list much like layer styles. Now looking at our image, the stained glass filter just sort of eats away at the other things we've applied. Maybe it would have looked better if we had applied it first. Well, with smart filters, we can find that out within seconds without undoing even once. Check this out. We can rearrange elements in the smart filter stack just as if they were layers. Pretty cool, huh? Now that we have the stained glass where we want it, maybe the image would look a little better with a stronger twist. Well, as you probably already guessed, no problem. If we double click on the Twirl Smart Filter, it reopens the filter interface, and once it's opened, we can make adjustments to our settings. For example, let's go ahead and change the angle to 200 degrees and click OK. And like magic, Photoshop backtracks and updates. One more time just for fun, double click on the stained glass filter layer to open up the filter gallery. You may get an alert letting you know that the preview function won't cascade through the filters higher up in the stack until changes are committed. I'll go ahead and click OK to dismiss that notification. Change your cell size to 21, change your border thickness to 4, and change your light intensity to 5 and click OK. Double click on the stained glass layer again, this time directly on this little icon right here. This brings up the filter blending options. If you get the warning dialog box again, click OK to dismiss it. Change your mode to linear burn, change your opacity to 50% and click OK. Pretty cool stuff. And don't forget, since this is a smart object, we still have the option of going into our smart object layer and making changes directly to our source document. Let's go ahead and do that now. Double click on the smart object icon to open the smart object document. Set your foreground color to red and set your background color to black. Now back over in the Layers panel, click the Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer and choose Gradient. Click the Gradient field to bring up the Gradient Editor. Click on this gear-shaped icon to bring up the Settings menu and choose Reset Gradients. Now select OK or Append depending on your personal preferences. Choose the Foreground to Background preset and click OK. Change your style to Radial. Change your angle to 150% and click OK. Now go ahead and close the Smart Object document. Choose Yes when prompted to save. Wait for Photoshop to update, and voila! We end up with a pretty interesting design that is fully editable and customizable, all without applying a single destructive edit to our source material. And that will do it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.